80 years after the Second World War, Europe finds itself at a crossroads once again. The war remains visible in monuments, cemeteries, films, and museums, but the genuine fear of war with its atrocities is fading. And so is the famous vow, never again.
Okupacja to była bardzo przykra szkoła życia. Tam się dopiero zobaczyło, że ludzie nie dzielą się na tych, że są takiej czy innej nacji. Ludzie dzielą się na tych, którzy są dobrzy i tych, którzy są źli. Musimy zrobić wszystko, żeby się to nie powtórzyło. Krzyczeć głośno, więcej podobnego nie.
For 2 generations, the memory of catastrophe acted as a dam. It disciplined politicians, delegitimized extremism, and lent moral authority to nations. Now, as the last eyewitnesses die and the Cold War order has dissolved, the dam is weakening and starting to leak.
If war is to be avoided,
the peace dividend seems to be coming to an end. The images remain in history books, but the emotions that gave them power have dulled.
repeat, is the world's last chance.
First of all, because it is 80 years. If it had been just 8 years or 10 years, people still remembered vividly what it had been like. 80 years is a whole human lifetime, and so you have a whole generation of people who don't remember at all.
Oggi noi viviamo dopo l'era del testimone, quando la linea vivente di trasmissione della memoria si è interrotta per ragioni anagrafiche.
The generation who remembers the war is already almost dead. They are like 90, 95, people in a very senior age. And the younger generations know that as a kind of Second World Wars and Napoleonic Wars, something from a distant past. We don't remember that. That makes the work for all the far right easier. They are not connected in mind of younger people with the atrocities of Auschwitz, of Second World War, death, occupation, all these things that happened. This is for younger people a history, just a history.
Druga wojna światowa przyszła 20 lat po pierwszej, a zatem to tworzyło bardzo silną motywację do tego, żeby zbudować taki ład i międzynarodowy, i wewnątrz poszczególnych krajów, żeby zapewnić stabilizację, żeby wyeliminować, na ile to możliwe, niebezpieczeństwo powrotu do tego typu polityki, do tego typu konfrontacji, które mogą owocować wojną.
The EU and its predecessors, that is European Economic Community, was born fundamentally out of a slogan, never again. An idea of political integration, initially at Western Europe, was born on the ruins of the Third Reich and on the ruins of Europe destroyed by Nazi Germany.
This fading memory coincides with a new age of insecurity, geopolitical, economic, and cultural. Dangerous ideas, long thought buried, are not simply returning by accident. They are germinating in the soil of our own societies. The ideas are becoming more and more attractive. The setting might be different than in the 1930s, but their promise is hauntingly familiar. Dignity through exclusion, order through simplification, It worked then. Will it work decades later?
Get out of our country!
We've had populist movements before. In the 19th century, in the United States, there was a so-called silver currency movement, and actually a populist party which threatened the established Republicans and Democrats. We had radical movements in the 1930s, of course, and we know how it ended in some of the countries. So we need to be wiser this time. We need to be wiser on cultural issues, but also on economic issues. For example, in some Western countries, wealth disparities have become too big.
Zachodni Europejczycy mają poczucie, że system, w którym żyją, mówiąc brutalnie, nie dowozi. Że zachodnia Europa zostaje w tyle, że zachodnia Europa nie gwarantuje już ten model, w którym żyją, wzrostu poziomu życia. I to są bardzo bogate społeczeństwa, w związku z tym one są w stanie to znosić przez czas dłuższy, ale w którymś momencie ludzie mówią: OK, system demokratyczny, w którym żyjemy, nie działa. On nie działa dla mnie. I wtedy szukają innych rozwiązań. No i pojawiają się współcześni dziedzice czy spadkobiercy nawiązujący do nie wprost często do Hitlera, czy do Mussoliniego, czy do różnych środkowoeuropejskich faszystów, czy rządów autorytarnych, mówią: OK, my mamy rozwiązanie. Zobaczcie na tych demokratów, oni się tylko kłócą, oni tylko załatwiają stołki dla siebie, oni nie obchodzi tych polityków, nie wiem, w Budapeszcie, Berlinie, Warszawie, Paryżu, nie obchodzi twoje życie, drogi wyborco. No musimy coś zmienić, musimy zmienić system.
Gli eredi del fascismo, di ciò che può ancora essere attuale del fascismo, sono già qui tra noi e non si dichiarano apertamente fascisti. Sono i leader, i partiti, i movimenti populisti sovranisti che sono già al governo in molti paesi dell'Occidente. È su quello che dobbiamo concentrarci.
This ultra far right, they have a tendency to reshape, repackage their message, do it in a bit different symbols, like trying to have the same essence, the essence which is like hierarchy, authoritarian regime, hatred against people from different ethnicities, different genders, different sexual orientations, but do not just copy, the Nazi stuff. It's still, you got these movies, pop culture, and it's Nazis or like horrible figures which symbolize the mass death of Auschwitz, for example. You have the Schindler List, you have all these movies in which you have, the Nazi SS officers, horrible people depicted. You don't want to be associated with them anyway. But for the ultra-right, it's kind of, let's try to have the same essential vibe, but without exact symbols. That's why they substitute swastika with a black sun or Celtic cross. They don't want to have the same associations as they had, but they repackage. They use the same kind of feeling, the same fantasy about the ideal society, but connected more to the contemporary requisites, contemporary elements which want to compose this new society of the dreams, the horrible society for me.
Dangerous ideas rarely thrive in times of confidence, but when the ground is loosened by insecurity, they take root and grow. All across Europe, whole regions and populations are hit by economic disproportions and stagnation. People feel abandoned and look for a source of hope and dignity. In consequence, the social contract phrase and institutions look unable or unwilling to protect ordinary people. Radicalism and firm-handed rulers are in high demand.
Ja bym poszukiwał źródeł tego, co się dzieje, tych wszystkich niepokojących trendów, przede wszystkim w rozczarowaniu tym, co mamy. I to rozczarowanie wynika z poczucia bezsilności, z poczucia stagnacji albo z poczucia tego, że ludzie robią się coraz biedniejsi. Na Zachodzie to nie jest jeszcze doświadczenie Polski, bo Polska się bardzo rozwinęła przez ostatnie 30 lat i Polacy wiedzą, że żyje im się lepiej niż 30 lat temu. No pewnie nie wszyscy, prawda, ale w większości. Natomiast ludzie na Zachodzie mają doświadczenie kompletnie przeciwne, to znaczy oni się czują często biedniejsi niż 20 czy 30 lat temu i mówią, okej, no daliśmy szansę jednej partii, potem daliśmy szansę drugiej partii, potem daliśmy szansę trzeciej partii i ten system nie działa. No musimy spróbować czegoś innego.
What we certainly can't do is to say it was all absolutely fine, there was nothing wrong with it, I don't know what you're complaining about, because there was a great deal wrong with it, both economically and culturally.
Established parties ignored issues that people felt strongly about. For example, the issue of migration. Migration has its upsides, but also its costs. And well-managed migration can benefit both migrants and host societies. But when people feel the loss of control on the external borders, or when they feel that the rate of migration is too high to absorb the migrants for them to become loyal and productive citizens, then that's when you get trouble. And not just in Poland, not just in Europe, in the United States it's the same story. So this has to be tackled either by mainstream parties, or it'll be tackled much more brutally and incompetently by the populists.
Ludziom się wydaje, bardzo wielu ludziom, nie wszystkim oczywiście, ale wielu ludziom się wydaje, że polityk jest sprawczy nie wtedy, kiedy postępuje zgodnie z procedurami, ale wtedy i coś robi zgodnie z procedurami, tylko wtedy, kiedy mówi, ja złamię te procedury i nie musi być tak, jak ja chcę. I to wielu ludzi rozumie jako sprawczość.
Equally corrosive is the atomization of the society. Post-war Europe built strong civic associations, unions, and collective projects that bound people together. But decades of cutthroat capitalism brought their results. The citizens reduced to consumers, and collective social life hollowed out. People may be networked like never before, but they are more isolated than ever. Social media connect without organizing. Millions scroll together, yet act alone. Mobilized energy bursts into hashtags or marches, but leaves no lasting effect. This loneliness makes people easier to segment, easier to intimidate, and more susceptible to exclusionary myths and other catchy stories, often based on hatred or prejudice.
Questa potenza tecnologica, che ai suoi albori portava con sé una promessa democratica, no? Progressista, di orizzontalità della conoscenza, di libertà della comunicazione, in questa fase matura invece mostra il suo altro volto, il suo volto antitetico, antidemocratico, autoritario, elitario, e coopera attivamente, potentemente con la diffusione dell'ideologia populista sovranista. Ma non perché ne è soltanto uno strumento, non perché si mette al servizio, perché per sua natura la bolla dei social media dentro cui le nuove generazioni vivono e milioni di elettori vivono ha una natura di tipo totalitario, è contraria ai processi di presa di coscienza, di consapevolezza critica, di analisi razionale della realtà che sono necessari alla vita di una democrazia.
One of the features of this is simple answers, simple solutions, right? It's all terribly simple. It's the bloody foreigners, or the Jews, or whoever, or the Germans, or whoever it may be, and they're to blame for everything. Now, these platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and others, are great for simple answers. for constantly repeated single answers. So I think that's a significant part of the story. And of course with very, very, you can say almost anything on these platforms. There was a period, particularly under the Biden administration, when, for example, Facebook really was trying to regulate the most extreme forms of speech. And now with Trump and the Republicans coming in the name of free speech, Mark Zuckerberg has said to hell with all that, to hell with the fact-checking. We want free speech, which of course, properly understood, is not unlimited speech.
Finally, there's memory itself.
The resurgence of anti-Semitism means that the hate of the past is still with us. Jews are again not feeling safe living in Europe. After the Holocaust, this should be unacceptable. Never again should truly mean never again.
Because never again means telling the story again and again. Anti-Semitism is at record highs. And what is true for anti-Semitism is true for other forms of hate. Racism, anti-Muslim bigotry, xenophobia, homophobia, misogyny. Neo-Nazi, white supremacist movements are becoming more dangerous by the day. In fact, they now represent the #1 internal security threat in several countries and the fastest growing.
As living witnesses disappear, Europe's moral consensus no longer rests on experience, but on symbols. The slogan of "never again" might soon become little more than just a museum talk. Political parties curate a selective past, a homogeneous, differential, safe society. They weaponize nostalgia, instilling the false but seductive thought that the country used to be better.
Social media che si sostituiscono totalmente quale interfaccia rispetto alla realtà empirica e esperibile e rispetto alla realtà storica, cooperano attivamente con questo processo di mistificazione e di cancellazione della memoria. Però è interessante il fatto che non sono solo i giovani, sono anche le generazioni più vecchie che, smettendo di leggere, di approfondire, di ragionare, di argomentare, sostenuti dalla comunicazione politica populista che passa attraverso l'emotività, l'ideologia, l'irrazionalità di Internet, diventano analfabeti di ritorno.
Populism provides wrong answers to good questions. The questions are genuine. The questions express anxieties, grievances, complaints, and claims by people who often felt that they are left alone, that they are missing out on some benefits that others have, which have various anxieties about their future, their family's future, or which, therefore, they look into the future with fear, but look into the past with a sense of nostalgia.
When the soil is insecure, the seeds that germinate are the simple stories. Complex problems such as climate change, migration, or technological disruption are neither attractive nor meaningful. People want immediate solutions right now. The brain, trained by social media, is already used to instant gratification mechanisms. And here comes authoritarian nationalism.
Nem engedjük, hogy tönkretegyék a városaink és az utcáink biztonságát.
It thrives by abolishing complexity itself. By naming an enemy, it transforms collective anxiety into precise, targeted anger.
Populist leaders provide very simplistic, seemingly easy answers. They are guilty. They, being Jews or Muslims or George Soros or whoever else, this really doesn't matter who is the enemy. What's important is to identify the enemy, who threatens your livelihood and your sense of culture.
Rozbijanie jedności się można realizować przez podsycanie skrajności. A zatem właśnie ruchów, ugrupowań faszystowskich, antydemokratycznych, rasistowskich, ale też, proszę bardzo, kiedyś lansowano komunizm, być może w tej chwili można też lansować anarchizm, zależy jaka jest gleba w danym kraju. Anarchizm, jakieś właśnie ekstremalne zjawiska, które muszą budzić silny sprzeciw. Więc sądzę, że w tych gabinetach KGB oni sobie robią takie symulacje i różne rzeczy próbują podsyłać. Niestety zmiany technologiczne, które przeszła przez świat, powodują, że wkładanie w tą debatę publiczną takich treści jest szalenie łatwe.
Cioè promettere una brutale semplificazione della complessità della vita moderna che le masse smarrite, impoverite, deluse, disorientate percepiscono come una liberazione, con un sospiro di sollievo. Via il Parlamento, via le regole, via le norme, via i magistrati, via i giornalisti, via gli scienziati, via tutto. L'emergenza climatica non esiste. Dice, ma come? Ci sono 40 gradi, ci sono le tempeste? No, ha sempre fatto caldo, ha sempre fatto freddo. La gente comune tira un sospiro di sollievo, fa... Questo lo capì per primo Mussolini e lo praticano ancora oggi.
This anger is then cultivated by political entrepreneurs, not that they believe it, but they find it useful. Their method is the politics of the killer clown. Outrage, buffoonery, and provocation are not mistakes. They are strategy. Scandal generates saturation. Saturation normalizes the outrages. Normalization justifies the leader's straightforward claim, I'm the only one who can restore order. The cycle of narrative paralyzes the opponents and democratic leaders, keeping them on the back foot.
Jeżeli popatrzymy na wybór, jaki mają ludzie w demokracji dzisiaj pomiędzy właśnie tak zwanymi killer clowns, czyli Orbanem, Trumpem, takimi politykami, którzy są świetni w ogrywaniu social mediów i równocześnie są autokratami, a takimi politykami starszej daty, liberalnymi, którzy nam mówią właśnie o procedurach, o tym, że trzeba zaczekać, no to ludzie, którzy są sfrustrowani swoim poziomem życia, sfrustrowani czymś, co postrzegają jako brak perspektyw, na kogo wybiorą?
These protest movements usually come with some core agenda or issue that some people care about. And if it's a genuine issue, we should not propose, like the populists, simple solutions to complex problems, but we should take the issue and solve it properly. And then we have a chance to regain the people's trust.
Mimo że mówimy za długo, za dużo, za skomplikowanie, to się nie da inaczej, bo mówimy o zjawiskach skomplikowanych i musimy się próbować przebijać. Natomiast oczywiście nasi przeciwnicy, w tym wypadku użyję tego słowa, operując jednym prostym hasłem, jednym prostym zdaniem albo obrazkiem, który ma coś poniżyć, poderwać zaufanie, ośmieszyć, mają pewną przewagę.
Remember how everyone dismissed Donald Trump in 2016, a clown. Remember how they said he could never get back, and he has got back. So that it's much more serious than that. So I think that no, we should take this very seriously. There's no clown about it. But what we should understand is that what we may call clowning has a lot of popular appeal. One of the problems with liberal politicians is that a lot of people think he or she is not speaking to me. They're not speaking my language. And then someone like Trump or Nigel Farage comes along and people think, oh, this guy is speaking my language, he speaks like me.
The new economy, where our attention is the most valuable currency, accelerates this dynamic. Social media memes function at low cost but high efficiency. They substitute argument for emotion and give the radical right a first mover advantage. They package events in sensation before institution can even consider solutions.
L'attacco quindi alle istituzioni del sapere, della conoscenza, alle università, alle scienze, agli intellettuali, ai giudici, ai giornalisti. Tutto ciò che è il linguaggio della conoscenza, del sapere, della verità viene combattuto come un nemico. Questo è più vicino, diciamo, al mio ambito, può sembrare a molti marginale, ma è centrale, perché una volta che si è fatto piazza pulita della conoscenza, delle verità, del sapere, dell'informazione, il terreno è arato per la pianta populista, sovranista o fascista, come volete. E fate attenzione, in questa polemica costante contro i presunti nemici della volontà del popolo non c'è mai un'argomentazione, non c'è mai un'idea, ci sono sempre soltanto attacchi personali, ad altezza d'uomo, contro la persona, non contro le sue idee.
Meanwhile, institutional drift and the inertia of the system weaken the guardrails. Courts, media, and civil service lose autonomy through patronage and partisan capture rather than coups. A system that was once self-regulating is being hacked from the inside. Elections do survive, but liberal plumbing corrodes.
I spent much of my professional life studying constitutions. But I must say that with time, and as I study these constitutional documents around the world, not just in Europe, I grow increasingly skeptical about the capacity of any constitution to prevent such phenomena which are contrary to the traditional democratic liberalism, to protection of individual rights, and to the rule of law. In the end, constitutions are nothing than pieces of paper. And if there isn't a strong will in good faith by the politicians, by political elites, and by organized society, but by which I mean civil society, to protect those democratic values, then constitutions are not worth paper they are written on.
The state is repurposed to distribute dignity and punishment along identity lines. A dangerous political process begins to take place. Mainstream center-right parties imitate radicals to win back voters. This only shifts the whole political center further and further right.
It's dangerous if liberal democratic mainstream parties don't find a way to combat it. And I'll tell you one way not to combat it is to imitate the rhetoric of the extremists. So this is a mistake we're seeing made again and again, particularly by center-right parties, like the CDU in Germany or the Conservatives in Britain or the Republicans in France, which is to think you can somehow win those voters back by imitating their tough rhetoric.
Jeżeli polityk centrowy próbuje udawać populistę, to populista zawsze będzie lepszy, gdyż on będzie po prostu autentyczny. A wielką walutą we współczesnych mediach jest autentyczność i to, co ludzie przez autentyczność rozumieją.
The appeal of these movements is not primarily rational, but emotional. They offer restoration of identity and clarity about who belongs and who's out. They offer moral simplicity. The clean division of friend and foe beats the ambiguities of pluralism. They offer status restoration and promise to take revenge for social degradation or wounded and humiliated masculinity. Revenge policies remain attractive even when materially harmful because they bring back dignity.
We are facing the situation in which major political parties on both sides, I mean liberal left-wing and right-wing populists, are both kind of lying to their citizens. One, liberal left-wing, they are saying, okay, in this situation everybody benefits. If you are prosperous enough, entrepreneurial enough, if you're ambitious enough, you will succeed. But on the other hand, the right-wing populists are also lying. In that sense, they're saying, okay, now we have to bring your dignity back, and we're gonna bring your dignity back by referring to the historical events, to your glorious past of your nation, to the punishing those who are who did all the bad stuff in the last 30, 50, 70, 100, 200 years, whatever, or finding the hidden minority who rules everything, whatever, reptilians, I don't know, the Jewish, Masonic plots, whatever.
Komunikat, że coś jest trudne, że zajmie dużo czasu, że się nie da, że to jest masa skomplikowanych procedur. Ludzie są potwornie zmęczeni tymi komunikatami, oni je już odrzucają. I wtedy są gotowi na nadejście kogoś, kto im powie, ok, wyrzućmy te wszystkie procedury za okno. Po co one są? Wasza wola, jako wola moich wyborców, jest najważniejsza.
While the promises sound familiar, the form is different. Today, propaganda takes shape not as a ministry of truth, but as a network of influences. The erosion of the Constitution is occurring not through coups and revolutions, but through laws and appointments. Programs are hybrid. Free market rhetoric is combined with social chauvinism. The rule is simple: benefits for our own. But something else is more important: the politics of permanent crisis, a rule by exception, a spectacle instead of a plan. This is not a grand utopia, but a constant battle for attention.
You had a radio and newspapers. Control over newspapers and radio gave you, in the 30s, 20s, control over the masses. Now it's dispersed, it's networked. You got a lot of individual civil journalists who are producing different kind of live streams, talking in different kind of channels, not only YouTube, because they got getting banned on YouTube, but then using different platforms, Telegram, BitChute, whatever you choose. So again, it's dispersed, it's networked, not centralized, not hierarchical in that sense, but they are, swimming in the same pool of ideas, swimming in the same pool of ideology.
Patterns vary between countries, but the trend is the same. Across Europe, we observe a tightening of migration policies, disputes over the content of textbooks, and demands for greater sovereignty over Brussels. In Poland, three factors are particularly visible: historical memory as a battlefield, social benefits rationed according to the principle of our own first, and a direct sense of threat as war is round the corner. In the West, disputes over integration and migration are dominant. In Central Europe, the emphasis is on national identity and sovereignty. In the North, they focus on culture and education. Across the Atlantic and in India, the mechanisms are different in form, but similar in rhythm. From Trump's plebiscitary leadership to the Indian project of a civilizational majority.
Il fatto che non usino la violenza in quel modo non significa che non siano somiglianti ad alcuni aspetti del fascismo. L'assunto fondamentale di ogni fascismo è populismo, di ogni populismo fascista, quello che per primo Mussolini praticò con grande efficacia. L'assunto è quello secondo il quale il leader afferma qualcosa di totalmente illogico e smentito dai fatti, cioè io sono il popolo. E viceversa, il popolo sono io. La conseguenza molto grave per la democrazia è che se io sono il popolo e il popolo sono io, a cosa ci serve questo Parlamento? Il Parlamento è che è l'equivalente istituzionale della pluralità, della molteplicità, della varietà delle posizioni del popolo, degli interessi, dei ceti, delle classi, delle idee, viene considerato superfluo, inutile, corrotto, inetto e dunque viene screditato e progressivamente emarginato. Ma poi vengono emarginati i giornalisti, poi vengono emarginati e perseguitati i giudici, tutte istanze fondamentali per una vita democratica che non coincidono con la volontà del leader che afferma di incarnare la volontà del popolo, di tutto il popolo.
I takie sytuacje no po prostu będą. Będą, jeżeli my nie będziemy bardzo uważni, bo są tacy, którzy chcą być ponad innymi, chcą, no powiedzmy, im przewodzić. To są ci, którzy widzą tylko władzę i swoją, i innych w formie terroru, w formie nacisku. Dla nich wszystko jedno kto i jak. Oni mają tylko realizować to, co oni chcą. A to nie zawsze jest dobre.
The peace dividend is gone. Resources, attention, and trust are finite. Ultimately, this is about more than just political prescriptions. It's about rebuilding the sense of community that was the foundation of peace in post-war Europe. If institutions are credible and people feel they are not left to their own devices, then slogans of revenge and exclusion will lose their appeal. The oath of never again is not self-enforcing. It must be renewed over and over again in every generation, not only through memory, but through economic solidarity, resilient institutions, and collective projects. Only that can make dignity a public good rather than a private weapon.